Hello everyone, welcome to Fishin, the podcast where we discuss Modern's most competitive tribe and help the whole Magic community become better Merfolk players. I'm Kody, one of the co-hosts of the show, and not Kody Smith on Twitter, and we also have, as always, Matt, who you can find on Twitter as @MatthewCottle8. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. Kody, I appreciate that you're dropping my Twitter handle now, because I usually start going off on a tangent about some random carp that no one cares about and forget to actually say what it is. So really appreciate it.
Well, see, it's just in the script, so sometimes I say it without meaning to say it. Like it's again the Ron Burgundy thing. I will say whatever's put on the script.
I have some information that you can choose to use or not use. Up to you. Ron Burgundy will read anything that is put on that teleprompter. And when I say anything, I mean nah.
So how you doing, Matt?
Go flounder yourself, San Diego.
From the entire Channel 4 news team, I'm Veronica Corningstone.
And I'm Ron Burgundy. Go
Flounder
yourself, San Diego.
He's Tim.
And he's Harry.
And we're about to turn paper sideways. Turn Paper Sideways is a fortnightly podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering, from current affairs to our favourite format, Commander.
Join us as we break down new decks, review new sets, and discuss new and old strategies.
Find us on your podcast app, on YouTube, and on soundcloud.com/turnpapersideways.
You can also find us on Twitter @TPSMTG.
Cheerio.
Well, so to discuss our topic tonight, we actually brought on a special guest. Not that we ourselves aren't super knowledgeable on it, but we decided to bring in an expert on this subject.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk Pauper tonight. And as Kody said, we both really enjoy the format. We actually played Pauper on Saturday.
Yeah.
So, or Sunday. I don't know, sometime over the weekend.
Sunday, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But again, I don't really play Pauper competitively. I don't play it on MTGO. I usually just play with friends. So I'm not a huge Pauper expert. I, again, know it, not massively knowledgeable. So yeah, absolutely. So we brought on Dave to help us out.
Dave from Pappy Pauper, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you. Yay, Dave.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to talk with you, and very excited to talk to you about Pauper.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, Dave and I, we actually played a game where we challenged each other to make Pauper decks, Merfolk Pauper decks, and we played each other, and I won't tell you who won or lost here. You have to go to YouTube to watch the matches.
We all won. Let's be honest. We all won.
Yes, we all won. But one thing we did was we both recorded our side of the match. So what you can do is you can watch my side on our YouTube channel on youtube.com/c/fishcastmtg, and then you can go to Pappy Dave's channel. I'm gonna mix those up all night. You can go to Dave's channel, Pappy Pauper, when you search on YouTube, and you can see the match from his perspective and hear his reasoning for his plays.
Thank you so much. I found it very fortunate that all of my social media includes the Pappy Pauper tag, so people can find me one place or the other.
Yes, and you can find him on all sorts of places on the internet, and we'll get to that at the end. We'll save that for the end where we normally go over all that stuff. But before we jump into talking about Merfolk and Pauper, we do want to say thank you very much for listening and subscribing. That really does help us. If you're listening on iTunes or the Google Play Store, if you could give us a review and a 5-star rating, that would be excellent. You can also support us on Patreon, where your monetary support is greatly appreciated, and we have all sorts of different rewards at each tier level. Starting with the most important one is at $2, where you get the episodes ad-free straight to your whatever podcast device you use. We also have a new patron this week, and that is Michael A. Thank you very much,
Michael A.
Yeah, thank you. Michael is a streamer.
Hey, Michael, you're awesome.
Hey, Michael. Michael's a streamer. You can find him on Twitch as Michael Armando. and we'll have it in the show notes there as well, so you can just click on the link. He does stream standard Merfolk a little bit, and he does want to get into more Merfolk, and that's actually how we met and kind of discussed stuff. So yeah, he's great. We if you go to our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/fishcastmtg, we do mirror him whenever he comes on, because he does do a little bit of the Merfolking. And so yeah, go over and check his stream out. He's a pretty good streamer. So we're gonna go into our recurring.
No, we're not. We have something we have to do first. Something very, very important. Something very solemn, actually.
Oh,
we have to have a moment of silence for all those we lost this week. Twitter purged all the bots, and all of my Russian porn bot followers are now no longer with us.
So everybody take off your hats, put them over your chest. Ladies and gentlemen, the Leprechaun Brothers.
So, and again, not just my Russian porn bots, Kody's Russian porn bots, Dave's Russian porn bots, Obama's Russian porn bots. Ironically, Trump's are still there. That's kind of surprising. But I just want to say thank you for all the follows you gave me for all these years. You will be missed.
Oh, Danny boy. Oh, Danny boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
All right, now that the moment of silence is over, we're going to go ahead and go into the random Merfolk, which Michael picked out a random Merfolk, and he told me to use this reasoning for the number he chose. He chose random Merfolk number 69. And he said, because I'm a man-child. That's why I picked it.
Why? I don't get it.
You don't. We're not going to explain it. Go to your parents.
69 means hugs and kisses.
Yes, hugs and kisses.
That's why I always tell everybody that I want to 69 them.
Oh,
because I want to give them hugs and kisses.
I don't know about that, but we have the card pulled up here, and this is actually maybe Pauper playable. I wouldn't say possibly Pauper playable, because that would be infringing on another content creator, but it is Pauper. It may be Pauper playable. Dave, could you read the random Merfolk here for us?
That is going to be Ink Fathom Divers, costs 2 blue and 3 generic mana for a 3/3 Merfolk Soldier. It has Island Walk, and when Ink Fathom Divers enter the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library, then put them back in any order.
So being the Pauper content creator amongst us, do you think that this has fins in Pauper Merfolk?
The idea that you can rearrange your library actually seems to be a theme among many Merfolk. However, its casting cost of 5 for a 3/3, even with Island Walk, I'm slightly hesitant to consider it.
Yeah, no, five's way too much. This card is hot garbage. Sorry. Like, I cannot condone this. Again, you're not going to get that many basic islands in Pauper as compared to like Legacy, and then you get a dig 4 deep, which isn't even Ancient Stirrings, and you don't even get a draw card off of it. You just kind of get to rearrange them. So, and a 3/3 is really nothing to call home about. So, no. This card is playable in your Pauper Commander deck that is Merfolk themed.
Yes, so I actually played this card. I had 2 copies when they did the Lorwyn flashback drafts. Now, in that set, when you get to 5 mana, a 3/3 that has those abilities is actually okay. I mean, it's not again, it's a C basically. You wouldn't be super excited to take it.
I don't know. Island Walk in the sealed is great though. So I mean, in sealed format, this would be fine.
Yeah, and so, but by the time you have 5 mana, you basically the moving around the top 4 cards is actually very helpful, because you don't want to get stuck drawing lands or too many lands after you hit 5 mana, and so basically being able to move threats or answers to the top of your library is a lot better than just sitting there with nothing.
Sure. Dave, how long have you been playing Magic for? Just out of curiosity.
Since I was in high school, so I started out with Revised.
Oh, great, same. So, so you probably played a little bit of sealed Lorwyn then, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we can actually talk about this. Kody's not hasn't been playing that long, but in sealed Lorwyn, what would happen more often than not, or sealed or draft, is that you really would pick a tribe. So this would be something you would absolutely play if you were trying to get into Merfolk. As long as you weren't getting killed by other people trying to do the same tribe as you.
True. I think this would be slightly more difficult. Again, mentioning on tribe, Kithkin would have been a real challenge to try to compete and keep up with them. The 3/3 body, even in Pauper, it's nothing to sneeze at, a 3 toughness, but with so much removal prevalent, Blue has many ways to kind of counteract that. But again, Blue has, I think, a lot better options.
The thing I hate most about this card is there's no flavor text. Come on, if you're going to be hot garbage, give me a little bit of flavor. Give me something in Flavor Town.
If you're going to be hot, be spicy.
Thank you. Thank you. Caliente.
Matt, perhaps you should go back to check the Lorwyn text card. It says, quote, "None appreciate sun and shallows like those who have seen the depths," end quote. From Lilianda of the Stony Brook School. Here's your flavor text on a Lorwyn card. Perhaps the narwhal-like horn on the Merfolk distracted you.
well, Dogfish. Yeah. Win some, lose some.
Yeah, I did. To be fair for Matt, I did in the show notes. It just puts up the most recent printing art, which in this case, Ink Fathom Divers was in the Merfolk versus Goblins dual deck. So
and they usually bring the flavor text over with it. So
yeah, so that was half my fault and half your fault. But thank you, Dave, for correcting.
Actually, no, that's all Wizards' fault. That was a flavor fail. I'm a little pissed off.
True. Again, the evergreen abilities like Island Walk, we may not see those ever again, but I think most people know what Island Walk is, and especially someone who's willing to pay 5 mana should probably know what Island Walk is.
Yeah, I mean, Island Walk is definitely kind of up there as I mean, I guess it's the most well-known land walk ability. So it's one of those things, maybe they could bring Island Walk back. All right, so we're gonna start off here with we're gonna have a brief discussion about just Merfolk in Pauper in general. So we're gonna talk about kind of the pros and cons of this tribe in Modern, or sorry, not in Modern, in Pauper. What are we doing here? So, Dave, what is the thing that kind of made you want to try Merfolk in Pauper?
I think the addition of Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan helped bring Merfolk to the surface. They have a little bit more evasion than I expected. You'll see things like Giltgrove Stalker that cannot be blocked with power creatures power 2 or less, and given Pauper, that makes for early great swings. You have Mistcloak Herald and Triton Shore Stalker, the latter of whom I'm sure lots of people know of is one of the better Merfolk. If you could say a 1/1 that cannot be blocked is a better Merfolk, but truly start adding a lot of these together. Gaia Skyfolk and Shaper Apprentice now have flying options and allow Merfolk in blue and green to get through for some significant damage. Noting that green has a lot of pump spells, I think the pairing works well. In fact, I think it's a surprise for the metagame.
Yeah, so just bringing in something that people don't see very often is a way to kind of, put people on the back foot, so to speak. So what you're saying is the green is kind of what is something that kind of helps along with the synergy in the deck that may have been missing when we didn't have green Merfolk.
True. The addition of even something like a Jade Bearer, being able to start landing +1/+1 counters, only gets better when you add River Herald's Boon, which really kind of helps push the Merfolk in Pauper into a stronger and more defensive tribe.
Yeah, and I liked what you said about the unblockable Merfolk, because generally when we think of Merfolk in Modern or Legacy or even Commander, we tend to think of Island Walk, which we actually discussed a little bit off mic, is kind of the defining characteristic of Merfolk, is being able to just run past your opponents. Now, there are common Merfolk that have Island Walk, but the problem that we have in Pauper is there aren't very many ways that are good that turn a land into an island.
True. Well, even in Pauper, we'll see, thanks to Delver of Secrets, the preponderance of decks do seem to be blue. Ironically, Augur of Bolas is the most played card according to MTG Goldfish, and that creature itself is a Merfolk. I think many people may have forgotten that and just simply look to its abilities more so than anything. I believe as you and I were chatting offline at one point, Kody, we had talked about the use of Ponder or Adventurous Impulse as ways to kind of mimic Augur of Bolas's abilities, and was not able to find a good home for either of those cards, mostly because the unblockable creatures in this deck really force a low mana curve, and just being able to flood with, in my deck was 24 creatures, to be able to flood quickly and suddenly and add a lot of buffs, combat buffs, even in defense.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. So my Pauper deck of choice is actually Green Stompy, and the evasion for Pauper is just absolutely incredible. If you have a really good evasion package, there's not that much that your opponent can do. So, for example, my deck plays Shahili Ledgewalker and Skargung Pit Snake, and I'm getting through with 8, 9, sometimes 10 points of damage, completely unblockable. So in a deck or in a format where a lot of creatures are very low to the ground, there's not that many flying creatures per se. This is doing a lot.
Yeah, in Pauper, I think to say that any one creature is better than another, Pauper has very inexpensive ways of handling just any creature. Lightning Bolt probably be the easiest thing to come to mind. Then
Sure.
quickly, Doomblade, even an Unsummon is not outside the realm when we talk about Pauper. But being able to keep our opponent pressed with so many unblockable, looking at the game footage from Kody and I, again, even taking out 1 or 2 creatures, we just continually refill the board, dropping Merfolk.
Yeah. So Dave, it looks like your deck, unlike kind of the Stompy deck, isn't trying to go big as much as it's trying to go wide, even though you do have some pump spells in there. Is that usually the case when you're playing this?
Yes. What I want to be able to do is make my opponent second guess which creature they might want to block, if they can block, but to draw out what kind of targeted removal. Vines of Vastwood here really helps out, but it also, Giant Growth, I think is something that some people might overlook. The inclusion of Spell Pierce helps keep my opponent on their back feet while I'm continually trying to field more creatures going wide. Very few of the creatures, even if my opponent does have flying, can be blocked. So I'm able to either offer a vanilla, or in this case, Jade chump blocker, or I can get through with a lot of other unblocked creatures. And I think the surprise to this, and found a great home, was Ninja of the Deep Hours. Having so many unblocked creatures and then drawing into card advantage just keeps the gas.
Absolutely love that card. I've loved it ever since the original Kamigawa.
Yes. Well, the inclusion of it, I have 3 copies of it in the deck, and that accounts for more than half. It's almost 2/3 of the total online deck cost of this Pauper deck. The Ninja of the Deep Hours accounts for almost 2/3 the total online cost. But the ability to get card advantage off of it and continually land more Merfolk really, I think, helps give this deck a more competitive edge.
Yeah, and so the problem kind of stemmed from, or initially, prior to, like you said, prior to Ixalan, we didn't have the reach. Basically, we didn't have enough in blue, and then obviously there's white and black Merfolk, which aren't quite as effective as these green ones. And on top of that, like you said, we can use existing cards like Ninja of the Deep Hours and just kind of get people out of nowhere.
But one thing, what are we missing? And that's the Lord. And I know we've talked about this for a while, is that one thing that really keeps Merfolk as at least a tier 2 deck in Legacy and in Modern is the fact that they have a Lord that'll give it all creatures +1/+1 and usually another ability. And that, I think, is, again, I think everybody will agree, including both of you, which is what's keeping these decks away from probably being a tiered deck. But what do you think? How do you feel that it runs without having that Lord to lead them into battle?
I would lean a little bit more on Kody's advice in that regard, because there are very few Lords in general in Pauper. Soldier has a few, and they have some synergies with Goblins. I guess we could talk about Kobolds too. But overall, the ability to add +1/+1 counters, in my mind, fills a lot of that similar role. If Merfolk did have a Lord, or any other tribes really trotted out a Lord, they simply become a lightning rod.
Yeah, and like you said, how your deck works is it kind of wants to go wide, and when you have a wide board plus evasive threats, it makes it really hard for your opponent to decide, what is the proper choice. So basically, being able to, flood the board with threats, evasive threats at that, and then be able to just drop a Lord and pump them up entirely. Well, I mean, that's basically how Merfolk kind of works, is we have evasiveness through Island Walk, and then we have Lords that pump them up. So, individually, Merfolk really aren't worthy targets of targeted removal. It's not like you want to hit a Silvergill Adept with a bolt or something like that. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
It's like bolting a spirit token. Sometimes you have to do it, but you feel so bad doing it.
Yeah, and so that's why, Modern and Legacy Merfolk kind of live off the density of Lords. And Pauper, I'm not saying that Merfolk is entirely non-viable in that format, but you do have to consider that it will play differently. And that may be kind of where people playing Pauper Merfolk are having some trouble with it, because they want to port the gameplay from Legacy and Modern, and basically Commander too, which is just flood the board with lots of small threats and then drop a bunch of Lords, and you just can't do that.
Well, with Pauper Merfolk, especially adding green, I kind of lend a lot on my academic and professional background in psychology. Who is going to want to cast a Doomblade on a Mistcloaked Herald? Really, it's a 1/1 coming in, not really expecting much from it, but even River Herald's Boon as an instant really helps buff. Throw on a Giant Growth or Vines of Vastwood. Now we've suddenly got a surprise creature, even if we don't use Ninja of the Deep Hours.
Yeah, so basically, none of your threats look like they're things that need to be removed. And that's kind of, that could be the key to playing Merfolk and Pauper.
I think too, it will surprise a lot of people. I doubt very many people who aren't openly familiar with Ixalan and specifically looking for the Merfolk tribe can tell you what a Gilt Grove Stalker does, or why that would be important in this deck. And I think that level of surprise is what makes them viable, at least temporarily, until the metagame solves them.
Yeah. No, I agree. Do you have anything to add, Matt?
Well, I was going to say, that's the great thing about having a more fringe deck is that the metagame will never solve it. And you see fringe decks all the time that kind of just come up and just beat face because not enough people play them because they're not consistently good enough, but they're always a pain. For a long time, Panza was like this in Modern until Panza with Bloodbraid Elf coming back became a little bit more mainstream. It was one of those decks that no one ever played, but when it showed up, it always, especially at like local events, it always put up really good results because no one knew what to do against it. And I think you run the same thing here.
Yeah. So the other thing that we had kind of down as maybe a problem with the deck or with Merfolk in general was the fact that they were kind of split in so many directions because there's obviously the blue-green that kind of want to be pumped, like basically how your deck operates, Dave. You want to have lots of cheap threats, cheap evasive threats, and then you just kind of pump whichever one doesn't get hit, or you can ninjutsu in, to get past your opponent's blockers. And that, or they're, like blue-white is kind of a slow protection-y sort of thing, which could be good, but I mean, pretty much when you go past two colors in Pauper, it's really bad.
Well, why don't you just fetch?
Agreed. The choice of playing three colors is near suicidal in Pauper, unless you have a devoted resource specifically for sorting out that mana. Now, in consideration of that same statement, Merfolk do have a good ability, as our card today showed, to be able to sift through your library and find some mana. There are other cards that help rearrange some of your library in that aspect. But again, the payoff, even in white, life gain in itself is a terrible strategy, in my opinion, and I think a lot of others in the Pauper format. Elves can do great, but we've seen them being able to be taken down with some board removal and more evasive threats, just going over top a wider army consistently.
Life gain's an awful archetype in any format. Let's just be honest.
Unless you're Soul Sisters.
Even Soul Sisters is a garbage deck. I'm sorry, Soul Sisters fans. You play a bad deck. I play lots of bad decks, so don't really get you down.
Hey! You're saying that on a Merfolk podcast. All right. So, Dave, I mean, you did pretty much talk through your deck, and we're gonna have the whole list in the show description here. So, what parts of the deck do you think maybe you missed so far?
The sideboard really is, again, I added 3 more copies of Another Ninja just to be able to deal with any longer lasting, larger threats or something that might continually stop me. Other than that, I think it's a standard fare of what you expect from a sideboard. I tried to keep costs low, so I chose things like Nihil Spellbomb over Relic of Progenitus. Again, just trying to keep costs low. That's one of the biggest attractions I have with Pauper, is being able to field a deck, as you said, Matt, a fringe deck, a surprise deck, and being able to drop a few dollars on it to surprise people. That's also, it's a feel-good feeling as well.
Now, if you were to optimize this deck, though, you would definitely play Relic over Spellbomb because you're not running any black, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually so we'll get into my deck here in a little bit, but I was actually very afraid when you had a Nihil Spellbomb. I lived in fear that you were going to pop that off and my deck would just have gone down the toilet. Like so many dead goldfish.
Now, one thing I don't see, and we'll foreshadow a little bit because I don't think I saw it in Kody's either, was the most powerful card in Magic the Gathering is not either, I guess, second most powerful card. Most powerful card ever is the Basic Island. You guys are both playing that. Congratulations. But the second most powerful, Probe, which has been banned in every format except for Pauper. Neither of you guys are playing that, and you're in blue. Well, I guess it doesn't matter because it just costs 2 life anyway. But
I just was able to look at it from Ninja the Deep Hours presented a tangible threat on board, Probe. cost me 2 life. Life is negligible for this deck. There's not a really no life gain strategies, but I didn't need to see what my opponent had in hand more than I just kept chipping away at their life total consistently.
So the extra body was worth more than the information.
Yes.
Fair.
And in my situation, I had a very specific reason for not running it, and I had an inkling that Dave was gonna kind of go for a blue-green. I mean, we had sort of discussed deck ideas, so we had I think we had a little bit of an idea where we were both going with it. But so I kind of suspected that would be the case. Like, most Merfolk decks are generally more aggressive, so I just didn't want to put my life at risk unnecessarily. And yeah, that information is great, but at the cost of 2 life against an aggressive deck, that can definitely matter. So we'll. I mean, is there anything else you want to cover, Dave, in your deck before we move on?
No, I think we've discussed a lot of it. The unsung hero, I think a lot of this deck was Spell Pierce, being able to keep that open quickly, and again, fielding lots of inexpensive threats. I had that mana open and forced my opponent, in this case forced you, Kody, to really second guess how you commit to the board and what mana you have available.
Actually, I was going to ask about that. So was there a reason why you chose Spell Pierce over like a just traditional counter spell? Because you're running 21 lands and most of your creatures are 1 to 2 mana. So I'd assume that you had the mana available more often than not.
Yes. I like to play with hypergeometric calculations, and I just wanted to make sure that I had enough of the split in the lands to make sure that we got what we needed. I felt confident with this deck that we would have about a 90% chance of hitting our second mana by turn 2. And any additional lands were simply bluff, because, again, a lot of people will be expecting us to have counter spells or something else. I wanted to be able to commit more to creatures and to our spells, having our opponent look over and see that we have a couple cards in hand, whether they're islands, whether they're the expected counter spells, or whether it's simply one of our pump spells. That, I think, that level of surprise gained a competitive edge over just a generic counter spell. If they're going to get rid of something, they're going to get rid of something. A lightning bolt's a lightning bolt. Doomblade will take something out. The timing was more important than anything. With this deck being able to pump some of the things, being able to drop a creature, play it, pump something else, drop a Vines of Vastwood to protect it even further, and add a Spell Pierce, they begin to really surmount any kind of targeted removal quickly, if I chose to try to save something.
All right. And so yeah, I mean, honestly, your deck was very hard to deal with. I don't want to spoil the matches. I want people to go watch the decks, how they played against each other. But definitely, I think your strategy paid off. It was very hard for me to, especially some of my spells are a little bit more on the expensive side. So it made it very hard for me to keep open extra mana to pay for a Spell Pierce. And you're just the density of threats was very hard to deal with, for sure.
I found the Waterfront Bouncer from you. Come on, it does not look like a Merfolk. Look at that artwork and tell me that's a Merfolk, and I'll have to have it tested for steroid abuse.
No, so we'll go into my deck, which I have dubbed Scary Folk. I kind of just threw that together. So this deck is built around a Merfolk named Waterfront Bouncer. Now, you may not know what this card does, and that's fair, because
and he was errated to be a Merfolk.
Yes,
he was not originally.
So on MTGO it does say that he's a Merfolk, but on paper he is a Spell Shaper, but he's been errated to be a Merfolk. And he is 1 and a blue for a 1/1, and as an ability, blue, tap, discard a card from your hand, return target creature to its owner's hand. Now, honestly, this card was an all-star against your deck, Dave, because I would just wait, and it's like, okay, I'll take 1 damage. And then when you decided to pump, unless it was Vines of the Vastwood, I would just go, nope, back to your hand.
The counters were what scared me the most. Once the Waterfront Bouncer hit the board, my Jade Bearer and River Herald Spoon, that was terrible. Even Shaper Apprentice had to wait around for another Merfolk to make it fly.
Yeah, so basically my deck was loosely based on Waterfront Bouncer and an enchantment called Tortured Existence, which is actually a deck. Tordex is a pretty common deck in Pauper. Tortured Existence is an enchantment for black that has black. Choose and discard a creature card. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So, what I wanted to do with Tortured Existence was be able to use Waterfront Bouncer's ability early to stop attackers and, keep people on the back foot, and then basically be able to Torture Existence back creatures that I could use. So like I could drop a, get rid of a 2-drop creature or even a Mold Drifter or something like that I couldn't cast right away, and then, get it back later, by exchanging it for something that was more low impact. So I'll go over my creatures real quick. We had 4 of Augur of Bolas, which was 1 in a blue for a 1/3. And we discussed it. You look at the top 3 and you get an instant or sorcery from the deck, which is, it's a good roadblock. So it filters it lets you draw an instant or sorcery from the deck. And then it also is a roadblock. It just kind of blocks. Halimar Wave Watch, which is again in that same category. We're going for the long game, so we have time to level up. Being a 0/3 for 2 is fine. But then basically the more mana you pump into it, you can eventually make it a 6/6 with Island Walk. So that's just kind of a threat that can start out early and be just a blocker, quickly becoming an 0/6 and then moving up to a 6/6. Waterfront Bouncer we already discussed. We ran 2 of Mold Drifter, which is not a fish, but it does sure look like a fish. And it's kind of a Pauper staple. It's 5 mana for a 2/2 flying that when it enters you draw 2 cards, and then you can evoke it, just so again a creature that gets itself into the graveyard for Tortured Existence use. And then the Mac Daddy of the deck, Gurmag Angler, 6 and a black for a zombie fish. That's a 5/5 with Delve. So again, with all the spells that we have a lot of spells in the deck. Some of them I won't go over because they're actually pretty garbage, and I've since changed them out when I've been optimizing the list.
It sounds like you did really well, Kody. Yeah,
no, I actually did okay. Just we'll watch the games. So the spells were Careful Study, which is draw 2 cards then discard 2 cards. Which I actually did make the mistake on camera of playing this when I had only this in hand. So I drew 2 cards and then discarded them both.
That's actually not a bad thing, though, with a Delve creature.
Yeah, with a Delve creature, it's fine. But because it's it's pay 1, add 2 mana, basically. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you also just have to have the Delve creature in your hand. So,
or be trying to draw into it, knowing that you're only out.
Yeah. But so then we also had 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Unearth, which lets me get a creature with converted mana cost 3 or less, which is most of my creatures. And then we also had 2 Vapor Snag, which is another just kind of, stop my opponent or get rid of their creatures. 2 Agony Warps, which I definitely would not use in hindsight. Agony Warp performed way less than I thought it would. 3 of Chainer's Edict, which is just a value card. It honestly did not do super well against Dave because of just how many creatures he had. But Chainer's Edict is still a good card in Pauper, and you play it if you're in the colors, I'm sure.
I mean, Doomblade over Agony Warp, right? In hindsight.
Oh yeah, no, and
for removal. I mean, this looks a little too cheeky to me. Like you're trying to be a little too fancy.
Part of it was that, and like I said, I've revamped the list, and actually, tomorrow after this list goes, this podcast goes live. So tomorrow will be Friday, and I will be actually streaming the streamlined Pauper deck that I put together. So for our listeners at home, that will be Friday, July 20th. I will be streaming, I think at 9 p.m. Yeah,
2018. Hello from the past.
Yes, 2018. Yes, we're dating this podcast. And
because people are listening to this in like 2030.
Yeah, sure. That sounds reasonable. Yeah. So then basically we move on, and I just see here. I just accidentally closed the link, so opening it back up real quick.
Professional show here.
Yep, professional show. This will
Professional
get
show.
edited out. So 2 of Exhume. We're putting creatures in our graveyard, and so sometimes just discarding a Gurmag Angler, to Waterfront Bouncer, and then just exhuming a Gurmag Angler seems pretty good.
I'll just exhume a Mole Drifter back.
Yeah, exhume a Mole Drifter, draw some cards.
Seems good.
Circular Logic is definitely cut from the deck. It was definitely meant to be super cute, where I could discard it to Waterfront Bouncer and then counter a spell. So I'd bounce a creature and counter a spell. I thought that was just super cool, but that's definitely not in the list anymore.
Are you playing another counter spell instead now?
Yes. So I'm running more Spell Pierces.
Just more Spell Pierces. Okay.
Yeah, I do have some counter spells as well. I don't think I have them in the main board. Again, maybe I should have just had that pulled up. That would have been good. I didn't actually put the list together. I'll have it in the show notes. I'll have the updated deck in the show notes. And then 2 of Forbidden Alchemy, which is 2 and a blue for an instant, which is actually super important to this deck. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. And it also has flashback for 6 and a black. So this is actually a pretty good card to, pitch a bunch of stuff for Delve and get the instant or get the card that you need at that moment. And so it's not too bad. We ran 24 lands, and again, I didn't run any Evolving Wilds, which was just an oversight. But Ash Barrens also is another way to get more lands into the
Kody,
card.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why didn't you run Thought Scour over Forbidden Alchemy? It's cheaper, and you still get to fill your graveyard.
Because I didn't think about it. That's pretty simple. I haven't brewed a Pauper deck for some time.
Jeez, Matt, that's a much better idea.
Yeah, that is actually really good. I'm gonna write that down right now. Actually,
thank you for telling me about that.
Yeah.
If you're looking to fill your graveyard, I think a card a lot of people overlook is Ideas Unbound, back from the Kamigawa set. For 2 blue mana, you draw 3 cards, and at the end of your turn, discard 3. If you're able to just drop everything that you have before the end of turn, you have to discard nothing. There is no penalty for it. But 2 blue to draw 3, that's not bad.
No.
That's pretty awesome. I actually forgot that card existed.
So
and it's an arcane, so it's still pretty good.
So that's definitely important.
Yeah. The only issue I would have with this is sorcery speed. But I guess you kind of has to be to make that ability work well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just going over the sideboard real quick, Hydroblast is just kind of a pretty good sideboard card in all blue decks. I would recommend counter a red spell or destroy a red permanent. 2 Relic of Progenitus, also again just a good Pauper card. It is the antithesis of our deck, but sometimes you just need to push the button. And I did, in the optimized list, I did put some of the spell bombs in there because it only hits my opponent's decks.
There you go. Because that was actually my question, and this might be my noviceness. Is noviceness a word?
Yes.
That doesn't sound right.
We made you just made it.
I just made it. Copyright. Yeah. You use that word, you owe me $1. But is there really enough graveyard-based decks and Pauper to make Relic even worth it for you, especially with as much as you're chucking things in the graveyard and trying to bounce it back?
Yeah, there is a lot of need for graveyard hate. A turn 2, I think the turn 2 Annihilator decks.
Reanimator. Reanimator with Ulamog's Crusher is pretty rough. It's and there's definitely a lot of decks with flashback that you also just kind of want to incidentally take care of. Yeah. But definitely the spell bombs. I did get me some of those spell bombs.
I mean, spell bombs are definitely much better.
I also have 3 Doomblade, 2 Logic Knot, which is basically counterspell, but has Delve, which I just replaced with counterspell in the optimized list. 2 River Merfolk, which is kind of I also replaced River Merfolk. It's just kind of a hedge against red decks to kind of help get some extra damage in. Vodalian Zombies was actually something I specifically put in against you, Dave. I thought that you were running blue-green, and it turned out to be very ineffective because of how evasive your creatures were.
And I think I even, in the chat, I typed ha ha ha, because right afterwards I put down a Giltgrove Stalker and protection from green, but your creature had a 2 power, so even still
it
wouldn't have been able to block it.
That
So
and,
Kody, what you're saying is that's going to come out of the sideboard.
It definitely
when you
came
actually
out,
play this
yes.
against real decks.
Yeah,
or
and
not real decks, but other people you don't know what they're playing.
yeah. The other main green card that you played, Dave, was Gaia's Skyfolk, which I couldn't block anyway because that was flying.
Yeah, I think that card, a lot of people kind of dismiss that card for its art, and maybe rightfully so. Wonder how a Merfolk and an elf got together and why this exists. But I took advantage of it. Again, 2 mana on color and flying. Again, perfect target for Riverboon's Herald, Jade Bearer, or any other pump spell.
Oh, Dave, my favorite Merfolk card is the red-blue Goblin Merfolk hybrid Bass Sun. I love it.
Razorfin Hunter.
Razorfin Hunter, thank you.
It's red and blue.
Those hybrid, it just makes absolutely no sense. I mean, they must have been drinking a lot of brandy wine to make that baby.
But my last 2 cards in the deck were 2 Choking Sands, which is definitely helpful against like Tron and Affinity, where you just kind of want to, and that was just a generally good sideboard card that you should have if you're running black. That was just from my previous when I played Pauper several years ago. That was just kind of one of the things that I just kind of always jammed in black decks.
So the only thing coming out of your sideboard when you take this off into the great blue yonder is the Vodalian Zombie.
River Merfolk are definitely coming out. Blue for a 2/1 that you can pay blue to give it Mountain Walk is definitely gone. Logic Knock got switched out with Counterspell, and Relic got replaced with the Spell Bomb.
Fair.
So there's actually a few changes, and like I said, in the list I will post the actual revised list. I should have had that up, but we're a professional podcast, and that's what we do around here.
In my sideboard, I had Aerial Volley. I mean, it's just a good general way for green to deal with flying threats, but I really thought it might be good against you. I thought you might have thrown out a Shaper Apprentice or 2, knowing that you also had some blue, some flyers, and sometimes, I felt confident that you were committing when we talked to each other about building a Merfolk tribe in Pauper, that you almost had to build blue. So I thought that Shaper Apprentice would be something I'd have to look for, but I kept it in the sideboard.
Yeah, one card I was actually surprised that I didn't see from you, since we're talking about kind of edge cases real quick before we wrap up here, is a Spider Silk Armor. Is one that I thought I would see. That is a, let's see here. It is an enchantment for 2 and a green. Creatures you control get +0/+1 and may block as though they had flying, which can be a good sideboard card against like Delver and stuff. So I thought maybe I would see that, and I kind of just avoided flyers.
Well, what I like to do is really kind of keep a lower budget deck. Take a look at the price on Spider Silk Armor, even online. It's about $5.
Yes.
So, again, that would have been literally more than half of my total deck for just 1 copy. Being able to slide out some wins, knowing that my opponent paid 2 to 3 to more times more than I did, is just as satisfactory. Even if I'm able to slide away with, even if it's just 1 win. It's kind of a mental game, and that's where I think Pauper really appeals to me, is that I can take a lot of cards that people may overlook or especially disregard, and make something valuable, make something fun of that. Like I said, I do a lot of my professional work. Kody and you and I have talked, is dealing with lots of kids who have some challenges, and turning something that people sometimes may discount, perhaps even discard, and really finding value. I think that's the heart of Pauper, And it's not so much about price. It's about that mental game of magnifying and making moments. My kids enjoy the card game, and this is something we can share, and largely why I do what I do. It's a fun mental exercise that doesn't break the bank, and get to have some fun and get to meet new people like you and Matt in the process.
Well, we were really glad to have you on. I mean, we had lots of fun with our games. Could you very quickly, before we get going here, just tell us a little bit about your channel and what you do on YouTube and on your blog?
Sure. I like to tell stories. I use the cards as a little bit of inspiration to try and tell how would these merfolk work with this ninja? Why is this ninja in the deck? To me, it's more about trying to use the cards to build a fun story. It makes the cards more memorable to know what I have in my deck, know how often I've seen something or what to look for. But I like to do that on my blog, and even on our YouTube channel, I tell a little bit stories. I start off with a little haiku or something that gets people motivated about what the deck is, give a little preview.
Yeah, I've actually liked a lot of the videos that you've put up. Definitely, it's definitely a unique spin on a quote unquote deck list or a deck tech, and it's really cool that you bring that uniqueness to the format.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
All right, and you can always where can we find you on the internet?
I was lucky when I chose to brand myself that all of my social media is Pappy Pauper, Pappy Pauper, and you can on Twitter, on YouTube, on WordPress. That's where I do a lot of my work right now. So very excited by that, and again, I'm just happy to make a lot of new friends here.
All right, people, you have no excuses. A one-stop shop.
Yep, just go to every social
Go find
media,
them.
Go to every social media place you have and find Pappy Pauper, and you'll find him there.
Find, support, enjoy haikus.
Yes.
What could be wrong with all that?
Yes, definitely. Remember, you can reach out to us and talk to us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is @FishCastMTG. Personally, I am @NotCodySmith on Twitter. You'll find a much more politically and charged discussion on my personal Twitter, so you may want to avoid that personally. But you can definitely reach out to talk to me about Merfolk. I love talking about Merfolk. Matt, where can we find you?
I am at Matthew Caudill 8 on the Twitter. Contact me whenever you want. We can. I need to refill the followers after all my Russian porn bots went away. R.I.P. Pour a little Cristal for my fallen homegirls. So yeah, let's talk some cards or whatever you guys want to talk about.
And if you have a long-form question or want to discuss anything with us, you can reach us at fishcastmtg@gmail.com. Our cover art was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt. And if you like what we're doing here, please rate and subscribe us in the Apple or Google Play podcast apps, as well as find us on Patreon or at patreon.com/fishcastmtg. And again, you can support us for 0 space bucks by subscribing to us on YouTube, liking our things, and leaving comments. Following us on Twitch at twitch.com/fishcastmtg. And there's too many places to find us. Just find us everywhere and like us. I think
we're everywhere.
And
when I say we, I mean Cody's everywhere. I'll start following our own streams here every once in a while. But Dave, aka Pappy Pauper, thank you so much for being here tonight. This was actually a ton of fun. It was widely educational for someone who doesn't know as much about Pauper as they want to. I'm re-energized. I want to get back out in the Pauper world. I want to play some commons.
Sounds like there might be a rematch in the future, guys.
But this time with Matt.
I'm taking all comers here.
Let's do it.
I'll let him use my MTGO account, and he can he can battle you in some Pauper. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in this week and listening to us. and we will see you next week.
Have a good night, everyone.